What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here and welcome to a new album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from the band Machine Head, entitled Of Kingdom and Crown. This album came out recently and this is the latest album to be released through the Nuclear Blast Records label. This is the follow-up after the previous album that came out back in 2018 of the very controversial, maligned and dismissed album of the very politically charged album Catharsis. Machine Head has been one of my favourite bands of all time, and alongside others like Slipknot to Iron Maiden, Korn, Black Sabbath, Trivium, etc., Machine Head were one of the first bands in this genre of groove metal that I was falling in love with ever since I was diving into metal music as a teenager back in the mid-2000s. And I'll have to say this, that as much as I do love Machine Head, these guys have been one of the first ever bands that has brought to me with a lot of the favoritism and nostalgia. And I still do love quite a lot of their albums. These two, The Blackening and Onto the Locust, to be, in my opinion, the band's masterpieces and one of my favourite albums of all time, as well as that one of my favourite live albums of all time is the very overlooked Hell Alive album. Machine Head, to this point in their discography, they went into a different change into different members, because after the release of their album Catharsis, both Dave McClain and Phil Demmel decided to leave the band, and it's due to the difficult personal struggles when they worked with Rob Flynn from the Catharsis album. Phil Demmel did say that he was dissatisfied from Catharsis and he wished, according to an interview, that he would have taken his own riffs back that had been ended up on the Catharsis album. And Dave McClain had different reasons for his departure, but as much as I love Chris Kontos, Dave McClain has been my favourite metal drummer of all time, and to me, the most versatile one out of all of the drummers that Machine Head has been a band for this now over 30-year running career throughout the whole band's history. Of Kingdom and Crown is the very first concept album, and it's loosely inspired by the anime series of Attack on Titan. And this concept, at first, not gonna lie, I was really against with, because I thought it was really strange. But the more I was thinking about it as I was listening to this album, I got to appreciate this concept more because of Rob's explanations of basically writing the whole album into these separate characters that Rob did write about. The characters of Eros and Eros, which I think did sound really promising the more I was diving into this concept. And according to an interview that Rob Flynn had done recently, that a lot of the riffs were written at 3 o'clock in the morning. This passion and dedication into something new for this current direction of Machine Head. And what I really like about Machine Head a lot as well is that there's a lot of variety into many of these different places across the band's history, because the first two Machine Head albums are super packed with grooviness, and with the two controversial divided albums of The Burning Red, which I actually am a fan of that album and I am not afraid to defend that record, and even Supercharger, which did have moments, but I think The Burning Red is a way better record. And then later on, instrumentally and influences wise, Machine Head's reputation are finding different paths of influences, because I think that some moments of music can involve some heavy metal, classic traditional influences to some thrash metal stuff, and later incorporations in some personal to darker lyrical content, and obviously, as I've mentioned on Catharsis, a very political side besides some personal stuff and difficulties that Rob decided to write various songs about what he went through. But I think Of Kingdom and Crown was something to behold in a separate form and identity, and after listening back to Of Kingdom and Crown, I personally think that this is a very big surprise, and this is an album that I will absolutely prefer to listen to. Catharsis was, to me, an overhated album. I did not think that it was a piece of shit. It was a very ballsy move for Rob to express what he feels, and for me, not agreeing with a lot of what he said, I do appreciate on what he decided to write home about with whatever comes up to his head, and whether it's good or bad to you, I still do love to listen to Machine Head throughout a lot of the majority on their albums. The first track on this album, Slaughter the Martyr, clean guitar notes to open the song in the slow pace, and the introduction eases into the setting of what the vibe of the song would become, and it increases some more build-up and power, impressive vocals to grow the melody, and later on the arrangement was making a sinister and cinematic style, and the beginning of the song expands into this bigger sound, and then the whole band just makes it so destructive. Instrumentally, it's very thrashy, it sounds super slick and tight with the ability on the drums and the guitars that syncopate with each other, a lot of double bass pedaling action going on. It's just brilliant with these delicate tones. The chorus does sound dynamic as the chords do drone, as the harmonic vocals soar, and I think Slaughter the Martyr is a very, very good song. It's dark, it's brutal in its overall progression. What a great start to this record. Choking on the Ashes of Your Hate is just an aggressive number right from the start. It's chaotic onto its approach with instantly insane mad tempo with its playing that has built a lot of chemistry, and it blows into inventive riffs and drumming that they do command all at once with each other. This has so much energy that's powerful, stunning skills, and it gives me a lot of appreciation to hear all of the band go in all of these chaos on these changes going on. But this is really one of the heaviest moments across this album, and Choking on the Ashes of Your Hate was a song that I did like, but in terms of hearing this again for the whole record, I really got to absorb this album a lot better. So I do think that this is one of the really good songs on here. Become the Firestorm. This just opens onto a blast beat, maddening style introduction into the drumming fills that has so much control and brilliant consistency of the quick alternate picking, faster playing, and I think that there's some parts of technicality into the later parts of the song involving a big breakdown section that bursts in, to me, in a bit of like a Blackening era. It was a frantic direction with so much tension and desperation as the heaviness continues on. There was a beautiful section with the twin guitar solo sections, which adds a delicate form of texture, and it's just glorious. I really do love hearing this very classic twin guitar sections that Machine Head have done for quite a long time now, because there's a lot of that fun interplay into something like this. So I think Become the Firestorm was really, really good. Then on to the first interlude of Overdose, just the sounds of being inside the hospital, and you hear the despair sound with the expression of grief, and it leads into the track of My Hands Are Empty. Again, opens on clean vocals, but it opens differently into a separate melody marching backing drums into like a percussive way, and it begins very comfortably with other sounds coming in. Then the bands just go into a brutal sound of instrumentation. The arrangement can add some variety, as I was listening deeper into this music that at some points it sounded ferocious, the bands sounded ballistic, and in many ways the structure was attached into these same pieces over time. Wonderful guitar interaction. And as I do think that this is a good song, this is not one of my personal favorites on the album, because I think vocally on the chorus it does get pretty repetitive over time. I was not keen onto the sound of the way the vocals did come out through the speakers. For some reason it just sounds, I guess processed in terms of the whole mixing, but instrumentally I was enjoying quite a lot of it. It's just that the chorus was the weakest part onto this whole song, in my opinion. Unhallowed is just amazing. It's one of the strongest cuts on this record. Starts in like sort of a picking style, and then the distortion pops in with another great idea selection on guitar licks. The band here decides to slow the pace down into some mellowness and less of the technicality than that was happening from earlier on the record. Vocally is one of the strongest, if not the strongest part on this song, because the harmonies sounded so nice. I do think that this has a lot of emotion and presence into this song that delivers just such a consistent way that it moves along with the song. The second interlude of Assimilate, to me, is one of the weirdest track titles, but basically it's just a soundscape interlude in like a futuristic tone, synthy background noise with spoken word to know that this is the halfway point on this record. Then it leads into the next track of Kill Thy Enemies, which adds a lot of simplifying crunchy guitar riffs into the return into the grooves, which I was digging, and again the usage of the slower tempo, like a doomy style, as the band was moving things forward while this chugging guitar riff packed material goes all the way through. And sometimes that it makes me wonder on like a More Things Change era, weirdly, which I do think is a bit of a compliment that I like to share. Besides the awesome thick picking and legato on these wonderful guitar solos, this is another one that doesn't really fulfill so much, but I did enjoy the song for what it's worth. It's just that it doesn't flow as perfectly like what I really enjoyed a lot onto what I think of the album so far. No Gods, No Masters. There's a lot of these rhythmic arrangements into these beats, and the musicianship was terrific, but I think this one is one of the highlights. They were always on point on this track. Higher guitar licks arrangements. The vocals were placed in this thrashy inspiration that I think was very, very good. These whoa parts on the chorus sounded weird to me at first, but as soon as I was listening back to this, I think it did fit the mood and the overall sound. This song does combine the simplicity as well as the heaviness at the same time, which I think it did take me a lot of the time to absorb this one. And the more I got into it, I think No Gods, No Masters is another really, really good song. But for me, possibly one of the best songs on this album is the next song, Bloodshot. Bursts through with this dive-bombing intro in a similar way on a song like Old from Burn My Eyes. This is a fantastic song. Down-picking that was so presentable. The band sounded excellent, punishing aggression with these results. It's very versatile and adventurous in the later parts into this structure. One of the best songs onto this newer path of Machine Head's repertoire, in my opinion. The track Rotten, the next track, is just anger right from the introduction to these returns to chugging riffs and breakdown sections, and then changes back into the goodness of this phenomenal drumming patterns, and Rob's vocals on this one sounded so desperate, and that he was just anticipated to erupt his anger with rage. And the music goes on into these multiple repeats, and while I think that this is a pretty good track, the shredding on these solos in this song, oh, it's wonderful to hear, and it's just precise. I always cannot get a hold of this. The last interlude, pretty much is the reverse effect, droned in with just a few notes and clock tickings and a quiet few whisper talks, adding a bit more dark ambience, and that's placed into the last legs on this album, and it leads into, according to the standard edition of this album, of Arrows in the Words from the Sky. This opens on harmonic guitar notes, and the lower notes were beautifully played with the chords, and the vocals were added in this, I think, a flanger effect to make some atmosphere, and presents in like a climactic movement. But as a song, the instrumentation along with the vocals do complement each other, and this is a brilliant, brilliant song. Stunning with the wider array of stylistic influences. There are various sounds from brutalizing, slow, grudgy heaviness, but returns into the main purpose of the melody, and the melody musical progressive nature into this track. And I do love this one, and I think with the finalizing touches on this record, Arrows is one of the other favorites for me. Into the next track that I want to talk about, Extraception. This was amazing. This is possibly the first time Machine Head have done an instrumental track. This is a difference in key change and fades in the guitar melodic lines. And to me, this is like on separate genres into this one big package, driving along. It's ferocious, crushing, and quite obliterating. And there are points into this instrumentation. When I think of these melodic guitar lines, it does make me wonder on something like either like on melodic death metal sounds from Carcass or Amon Amarth, to these occasional new metal simple riffs like Slipknot. But there's just so much going on into this instrumental that it all blends, and I think Extraception is another one of the highlights, like a lot of the positives that I had said into Of Kingdom and Crown's reputation. With this album being made after the follow-up of Catharsis, I prefer this album to Catharsis. The only gripes that I had with this album are some of the drawbacks on weaker songs that I've said, and a few of the lyrics, but this album does not shy away with this amazing ability to have these phenomenal talents. The session drumming done by Naveen, who also worked with Job for a Cowboy to Animals as Leaders. His drumming on this album, something else. His skills were perfection, did add a lot of what Machine Head were all about, and his gifts and talent are just outstanding. And you can't go wrong with the lead guitarist who worked with Decapitated. He joined the band in 2019, and for him to replace Phil Demmel, it was all brilliant. I love Phil Demmel so much in Machine Head, but this new lineup of Machine Head, alongside with Jared on vocals and bass work, this is the lineup that I wish the guys the very best. And even Matt Alston, who did join the band, but he did not do the drums at all for this record. This is the lineup that I am going to be very positive about, to hear what Machine Head can achieve something after the previous lineup of the band that has been my favourite period of the band's history for a very long time. And Rob Flynn, so optimistic, a big workaholic, knowing what he wants to do best for Machine Head ever since the band's formation. I do appreciate this approach an idea of what he wanted to do after the previous lineup of Machine Head. But overall, I think Of Kingdom and Crown is a very good album, although I will say that this is not one of the band's top best albums. As much as I said, I do love these two, and even loving a lot onto the album of Through the Ashes of Empires. I just think that the mid-2000s to early 2010s, in my opinion, the golden era of Machine Head, and I do love Burn My Eyes and The More Things Change, etc. But Of Kingdom and Crown is a record that is a stylistic, well-arranged and well-inspired, better improvement than Catharsis. That's personally all I would like to say about Of Kingdom and Crown by Machine Head. Let me know what you guys think of this album in the comments down below. Do you think this is one of your favorite albums by the band or your favorites of the year? Do you think otherwise? I'm looking forward to see what your views are about this record. I'm going to give Of Kingdom and Crown by Machine Head an 8 out of 10. Despite some of the gripes, I was really positive into the sound of the band, this beloved musicianship to this point, and this brilliant out-of-this-world production is also one of the absolute best moments of this album's tone and presentation. So I think that this is one album that I would definitely buy, and it did deserve the critical acclaim, and much respect to Rob Flynn for having an idea that no other metal band could do something like this. And I know that other metal bands can make various concepts, obviously with others like Mastodon to Opeth, etc. But for Machine Head, this is the debut for a concept idea that I got to like more and more over time. So yeah, that's a wrap for my review of Kingdom and Crown by Machine Head. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.